Okay, so recording is on. So hello everyone. Here alongside the cowboy itself, we're starting the next summer meeting. It's good to have you all back. Um, well, like always, Yusha and I are here to moderate the conversation. We have Mansi just there as a post, since Lucas is basically doing all his job now. So yeah, if anything, just ask Nancy, but Luca is the one who is answering. That's how we roll. That's how Philosophy Club does things. Yes. Well, again, if anything, just check us on social media. We have everything: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Oh, but we do have to update the Facebook. So not Facebook yet, but YouTube is also on. We have a website. We have all the good stuff. Just check us. If you want more information about us, just let us know, and we add you in the email list so you can have all those juicy information from us. Besides that, I guess we can go straight to the announcement. If Nancy has some announcements, Luca, go ahead, take it over. And I'm just kidding. Nancy is the one who's going to be doing it. And then we just go straight
Mhm.
to the topic.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Professor Ulrich. He's the new, make it formal, new faculty advisor of the Philosophy Club and the new chair of the Philosophy Department.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No announcements. Just excited for today's meeting. Does somebody want to sort of introduce the topic, or I'm happy to?
Before we do,
Yes, please.
I have a couple people that said they're trying to use the link from Twitter to get here, and it's not working. So just letting you know.
I wonder who is in charge of Twitter.
Yeah, well, hang on. Yeah, no, I helped out one of your students, I think. Tell her that she's added to the Teams page so she can just log into Teams and join.
Okay. Is that which person? Is that Tiffany or is that somebody else?
That's Tiffany.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give them at least 1 more minute explaining again the house rules. Again, we roll heavily on the chat, so please make sure that you can see us in the chat. And Tiffany's here. Hello, Tiffany. So just write an exclamation mark if you want to speak. That way we know who goes first and who goes second. As you can see, Yusha is a designated exemplar. That's why he has the cowboy hat. That way
That's
we
right.
know that he's gonna be first and second and whatever. If you raise your hand, you do like a kapahua or something like to grab my attention, I will notice you. But it will be something like just adding to the current conversation and not something that you're just adding. If you're a little bit more shy and you don't feel like speaking, and maybe you have mic problems, you can still type it and I will read it just for video recording purposes so you can become famous in YouTube all around. There you go. So those are the house rules. I'm not completely sure if any of you know the topic for today, but essentially is opposite moral philosophies and relationships. So I can just go ahead and do a brief explanation as we were talking last week. Essentially, is like what would happen if you try to befriend someone who holds all opposite moral values as yourself. Can you actually befriend him? Can you work like harmonically with somebody who stands against everything that you believe should be how we should live? That's essentially what the topic is about today. If some of you already have some topics in mind about this, they feel free to just start like introducing this um, subject. Otherwise, I can just roll with it and start the conversation myself. So it's gonna be like 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I start the topic. It's all good. It's all good in the neighborhood. Oh, there you go. We have Isra. So go ahead, Isra. Take it. Take it.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
No, no. I suggest you just delete Microsoft Team and then return.
Sure. For those of you who can, hi, I'm Isra. I'm one of Professor Manzi's former students, and I am currently just in this meeting because I have something better to do, but I fitted for this topic, so I'm here to stand for my topic. Okay, so I feel like there are a couple of things at play here in the sense that the first thing you need to see is, okay, moral values is one thing, Another thing might be the nature that is influenced by the moral values of the person. So you might be willing to put up with somebody who has different moral values than you, but if it's something that's in the nature of another person, I think the question would be, are you willing to put up with that? Because they can't change their nature, or if they can, it's going to take a very long time for somebody to change what's embedded in their personality or what's embedded in their nature. So I think for me, the more interesting part of this topic would be that, okay, moral values is one thing. That's something that we can all kind of wrap our heads around if we're open minded enough to say that, yeah, I don't need somebody else to believe in what I believe in for me to feel secure in the relationship. But if it's something that's influenced by their nature, or if it's something like their moral values kind of reflect in everything they do, and that kind of gets under your skin, I think that's when things are headed for a bumpy ride, in the sense that you might end up butting heads on most things, or you might end up not arguing or not discussing those things that could potentially lead up to a larger argument or maybe a disruption in the friendship.
Okay, but I have one thing just to add on. So okay, let's say they just constantly just like making themselves mad, but both are open to learn from what their other person is doing, even though it is opposite. Do you think that like eventually they actually get there?
Eventually, okay, so in a euphoric, idyllic world, yes, eventually anything's possible. But in my opinion, I feel like there's a threshold of tolerance for everybody, in terms that how much are you willing to change yourself? At some point, you might start thinking that, okay, am I the only one doing the change, or can I see that change in somebody else as well? Or is it just one sided? Because then the dynamic comes in terms of, is it an equal relationship, or is it just me trying to change myself for somebody else's beliefs or somebody else's opinions? So in that case, I think that's where the line might be drawn, in terms of how far am I willing to push it for the sake of our friendship. At that case, I would just kind of weigh and measure to see, is it worth it for me to make those alterations in myself for the long term, or am I willing to, like, are there some good things in there and I can just learn from that and move forward?
Yeah, I see. I mean, something that has I've noticed at least that sometimes there are people who don't like they just have completely opposite view of how to do their work, but both are equally good in their own way. So even though they don't particularly would like to work with each other, they respect each other. And if somebody kind of like, hey, I need somebody who can like help me in this regard, they will even like reference the other person, even though their approach is completely opposite. So like, can we say that that's also a way to coexisting? Kind of like understanding like, hey, maybe you and him, her, uh, don't necessarily know how to work together, but you know that you can recognize that the matter is not wrong, it's just different, and they're efficiently in their own way. And I think that that's also a way that not necessarily directly you are like coexisting, but you kind of are, because it's not like you're close to their view. It's just like you don't feel comfortable with it, and at some point you're still even recognizing.
You got cut off.
Recognizing what?
Right in the middle. Right in the middle of the sentence.
Excellent point, Fernando.
I see what he's saying. I see what he's saying, and I feel like to some level, I feel like it comes down to the own self, in terms of how self-assured are you, or how easily are you able to get swayed by somebody else. In terms that if you have a lot of insecurities, or if it's new territory for you, then in that case, I feel like it's gonna the friendship is going to suffer in that case, because the person can't recognize one of the two people, or maybe both people can't recognize that, okay, this is an area of growth and this is an area that needs work on both our ends. So in that case, a lot of misunderstanding and misinterpretation can take place, where people would either start blaming each other, or the opposite of that spectrum would be they start blaming themselves, that, oh, it's my lack of ability to do this, this, and this, and which kind of hinders their self-confidence or other areas of their life. So again, I guess it comes down to kind of weighing and measuring between the depth of the friendship versus how well somebody is able to kind of coexist in that chaotic environment temporarily until they both come at a level where they can learn from each other. So I guess Professor Manzi's next, and then Yusuf next.
Oh, Yusha, you can go in front of me, please.
Hey, but before you go, is there how do people add if they haven't been here before? If they have Microsoft Teams, you search for Richland Philosophy Club, or how do you add?
No,
Yeah,
they have to come through us, and we give them access because it's private, no public.
Yeah.
So we have to know who they are, and we have to give them access.
Yeah. If they're already added, then they should just go to Teams and see it in their Teams.
Okay. Well, how do they get added the first time?
We have to put their email address in here, basically. So
Okay.
yeah. Message me or message Fernando private email addresses.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That Screeching Halt was brought to you by Professor Ulrich, your new advisor. But no, Yusha, please go ahead.
I guess we don't realize that we're already living in a society, right, where different ideologies are already coexisting, especially ones that butt heads together. But we find a way to live harmoniously in a perfect symphony where both can coexist. Like you can take the American political system where you have Republicans and Democrats, right? Both my neighbors hold very opposing and very strong political ideologies and philosophies, right?
Sorry, can I interrupt for a moment? I think drawing your horse. It's hard to hear you.
There. Is that better?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's better.
I was gonna suggest lift your mic a little bit because I guess you put it on the stand.
I have it sitting on my laptop.
Yeah.
But yeah, both my
You could
neighbors.
tilt it sideways.
Okay, so if you want to let me speak,
Yeah, just now. Go ahead.
are you sure you're done?
Just for record purposes, they're brother and sister. This is completely okay. This is completely okay.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
making sure. Tiffany was already like, "Is this how
I was
they
like,
roll
"What?"
in philosophy club?"
No.
I had
And they just
the
not disrespectful
Kamala,
to each other. No, no, they
Kamala
are
Harris.
brother
Like,
and
I'm
sister.
speaking. Okay, go ahead.
That's just my sister, and that's a daily thing. So
That
yeah,
makes a lot more sense.
as I was saying, in a society, this society, especially where we live in, everyone has some form of difference of opinion. Either it's philosophy, religion, just opinion in general, politics or whatever. But we fail to realize that we already exist in a place where different things can coexist, right? So, for example, both of my neighbors, one is a hardcore Republican and the other is a hardcore Democrat. They coexist, right? When we have our community events, anything like that, they're there mingling, talking to one another, happy-go-lucky kind of thing. It's within ourselves that we let our differences highlight us. Like if I say that, oh, because I'm a Republican or because I'm a Democrat or because I follow this philosopher, because I follow that philosopher, I'm not going to do any interaction with X, Y, and Z type of people. That is the difference that we create amongst ourselves, right? So when it comes to coexisting and living in an environment um, where this kind of thing already happens, in recent times only that we've seen after a certain president that was replaced this past election, in their time only did we see our differences actually break us apart as a society, as a community. Before that, not to my knowledge, it was anything that severe. I mean, every day I stopped watching news because every day someone's dead, some police officers being persecuted, some Muslim guys being held up at the airport. It's all bad now. Why? Because we let ourselves do that. If we say, okay, yeah, we have differences, why not we learn from it? Oh, that philosopher says that. That's funny because this philosopher also says the same thing. Why do we not try to find the commonalities out of those differences? Is it not in human nature to help a society preserve itself?
Yeah, I mean those are good points. I do want to add something that you were mentioning, because when you mention politics like matters, it does touch home, not necessarily because of all the things that happen here in the United States, but very specifically in my case to the things that happen in Venezuela. So like in Venezuela, if you go with Chavez, like they're it's very dicey, it's very spicy. So like people will literally like even families, if you have the opposite views in politics, they are like no longer in contact. Like there's like you just I just remove you from now and then. We don't even know each other. So what exactly can happen? Like okay, because even though there are some people that I know that have the specific views that are opposite to me, I'm not close to that. And sometimes those who follow Chavez or used to follow Chavez because he's dead, but I guess his ideology is still there, and the other ones who hate them, they still kind of coexist. So like, can we say then like they have to have a specific set of morals for them to actually kind of like be accepting of the opposite views, or it doesn't matter like even if you are like the most highlighted human being in existence. If you have somebody who holds all opposite things, you cannot just like even talk to him. And I see that Tiffany wants to add something to what I'm saying. So go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Uh, sure. I was about to tease you, but you're new, so go ahead.
I agree with what you say. I've had both experiences in my family. My aunt actually is in the process of divorcing her husband. So my entire family is conservative, right leaning, and there's just a couple, like a handful of us that are more liberal, left leaning. My aunt is in the process of divorcing her husband because he's been so hateful to people that aren't like him. And it's crazy to see that kind of fraction happen in a family because of different beliefs. And so, but on the other hand, I have a best friend who has opposite views that I do, but we maintain a friendship and we have for decades. So I think there are a few things that have to happen in order to have relationships with other people that have opposing moral views. And I think one of them is you have to be open to new ideas. Both of you do. I think that both of you have to have a level of respect and trust for each other, um, and an allowance to, like, I allow you to have your belief and you allow me to have my belief. That's part of that respect and trust. And then you also have to have other things that you come together on, different things that bring you together other than the things that you're opposite on. So um, there are a lot of other. So my friend who I'm close to, who has very, very opposite political views than I do, we both are animal lovers. And so we have that in common. And so we can connect on that level. Um, and I mean, among other things, but there have to be other unifying factors in a relationship other than the things that are keeping you apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I have one thing because like at least the way the topic was presented is opposite in everything. So like
In
one of the
everything.
yeah, but one of the key
Okay.
things that you mentioned is that they both have to at the very least be open. So if we remove that, let's say that there's only one person who is extremely open to understand the other person and even adapt, could that still work?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think if you're not open to opposite views, then even if the other person is, you're going to have, and I've seen it firsthand, you're going to have division. You're going to have, conflict and strife. And I wouldn't know how to bridge that gap personally.
Yeah.
I've
I mean,
tried
it,
and
it is
failed
interesting.
miserably.
No, the most interesting thing is it's like it seems like the experiences that you have with that person might not be sufficient. It's a matter of like how you approach life itself. So before I move on, I'm not completely sure because my internet cut for a moment. If Mansi spoke, I don't know if you want to speak. Otherwise, I will have to give the floor to Isra.
No, I did not speak yet. Yeah, I guess. Well, I'll respond to the last couple of points, I suppose. Because I like where the conversation's going. It does seem like we're focusing on the idea of I suppose, what galvanizes a relationship to begin with? Friendship, a loving relationship, maybe more societally speaking, as Yusha was getting at. And again, it does seem as though to have morally antithetical positions on something could make it tough to feel part of a relationship, to feel like you can relate. But having said all that, again, I really like the last points that Tiffany was making, because it does seem as though, well, just because maybe you disagree on one thing morally doesn't mean you're going to disagree on everything morally. And so maybe it's the similarities that could allow for the possibility of a sustained relationship, like on an individual level. Whether or not that's possible, maybe on a larger scale, is a question. But at the same time, that also, those points also sort of beg the further question, well, are there any bottom line moral issues that if somebody does not see eye to eye with you on, then that's it. That's like the whole story. Are there other moral positions? We don't have to say moral philosophies, but just moral opinions, moral stances you might hold that are kind of negligible. Maybe you're willing to look the other way if somebody close to you, completely disagrees with you on something morally, some controversial moral issue. But there are other, again, ties that bind to the relationship. In other words, are you ranking your moral positions in terms of how much they mean to you? Do you have any that you cannot compromise for the sake of your job or your society or your, I guess, maybe old friendships or something like that? So I wanted to kind of put that all out there on the board, because it does seem to get complicated when we do consider, I guess, the more concrete realities, which is that it's hard to find somebody that completely disagrees with you on every moral premise. But maybe is it a matter of the quality of the moral premise itself, or is it more like a quantity? It's like, yeah, we agree for the most part. So these few things that we disagree on, we can just look the other way. Things like that.
Okay. So essentially, it also depends on what type of opposing views you have, essentially. Okay. So now again, the floor is let's just avoid Isra. Yeah, she has already spoken her field. All this meeting is fine. You can move on. It's fine. It's fine. Just talk. Just talk. It's fine.
Okay, so a couple interesting points that I heard here would be that even if hypothetically speaking, morally speaking, everything that you believe in is opposed by the person who you're trying to build a relationship with, I think the bottom line would be, at the very least, the most common thing that everybody can find to agree upon is just the general respect of a human being, in the sense that you're not cruel to them, you're not rude to them. That's the basic bottom line in terms of just being able to build a connection. Because I think when it comes to making relationships with anybody, even if you're meeting acquaintances with people, or even if you're meeting them for the first time, the first thing that we all tend to do when we are trying to come across as friendly, or when we're trying to build a new friendship, I think we try to find a common connection, or we try to find that one thing that's common for both of us to talk about, or just in general get to know the other person to understand where they stand, so that we avoid the topics that kind of are triggers for them, or they avoid topics that are triggers for us, essentially. So as far as the political thing goes, in terms of how it's disrupting families as well as relationships that have gone on for years, I think it's now, the generations now are becoming less tolerant of those opposing opinions, in my opinion, in the sense that most people want to disagree with each other, but then they can't tolerate each other's differences, in the sense that something makes them uneasy about it. It's even though it's natural to be different. And I feel like when you try to deter from the natural state, that's when more problems consequently happens, in the sense of just being able to feel that, yeah, you have somebody that you can talk to, just being able to connect with somebody on the basic level. But on the other end, I don't think there's anybody that you can find who would have 100% opposing views to you. Like, I think that's very rare. And if that is the case, then I think the marker or I keep saying the word threshold because in my mind it's like a level that you have to cross to be able to say that, okay, yeah, these are the things I'm willing to put up with. These are the things that I draw the line at. I can't go further than that. So I think, for example, a lot of people would say that a moral quality that they look for in a person would be that they don't lie, or they're at least honest, or they would have the courage to tell the truth. If I can't trust somebody like that, in the sense that let's say that I meet somebody and I realize that over time that, okay, they have the quality about them that they prefer to lie, or somehow they try to conceal the truth or the reality. So essentially, that's where I would probably draw the line, saying that, okay, if you're willing to do that to the other person, most likely you're willing to do that to me too one day. So where would I know where I stand with you, you know? So in that case, I think that's where more people, in terms of self-preservation, more people try to draw those boundaries around them. And that's why they try to either avoid people they have difference of opinion with, or they try to not talk about things that are kind of triggers for everybody. Because that's something our dad kind of taught us like early on, where he would say that, okay, when you're in public gatherings or when you're in like large groups, don't discuss religion, politics, or what's the other one you said? There's one more. We don't discuss those three things outside of those people you trust completely. Even if you have opposing opinions, you know that they're going to tolerate those opposing opinions instead of kind of getting aggravated and, you know, escalating the situation.
Yeah, no, thank you for those points. I just want to chime in really quickly here. Because again, I like we're getting at this idea of commonality of moral opinion. Not necessarily arguing whether or not one opinion is right or wrong, so to speak, but just I think that's the key to getting at this topic. Because look, you could have two friends who just lie to each other all the time, and they get it. And there's like a mutual understanding. It's like, oh, you lied to me about that, whatever, how much the bill was. And the guy was like, yeah, you know, I didn't have the money on me. You would have done the same thing. You would have lied to me. Your friend might be like, yeah, fair enough. So, you know, it's that seeing eye to eye thing that really, I suppose, if not births relationships, at the very least, I guess can add to them once you realize, oh, we do see eye to eye on things like this, whatever the position itself happens to be. Oh, Tiffany, if you want to speak, just send an exclamation mark into the chat, and that'll add to the queue. Just
okay.
so we,
I was not aware of the etiquette of the group yet. Okay.
I blame Fernando for not making that clear to you.
Fernando,
I did. I actually did, but she arrived later. She arrived later.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my fault.
Oh, okay. And if we start like pointing fingers, she was later because some link was not properly on Twitter.
Technical difficulties.
So jokes on you. Let me like, by the way, that responsibility right there. But okay, no,
I
it's
wanted
okay.
Jeff to finish his thought.
Oh no, I'm good. Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I think there are two things that could make it possible for two people of differing moral values to come together. And I think it's a shared past experience, even if they have different moral values, a shared past experience, and the importance of the relationship. So if it's my mother or my husband, well, husband's different. You can always divorce, right? You cannot divorce your mother, right? I'm thinking of importance of relationship. You want to keep those people close to you for reasons other than what their beliefs are. And so you're willing to overlook the differences because they're so important to you. Especially if you're you know, younger, you know, you're still in your formative years, you're still a teen, you're still trying to figure out who you are. Your parents are very important to you. So I think those two things could unify two people that have differing moral opinions. So like, for example, on the importance of relationship, if like there were an apocalypse and there were only two people left, that person would be really important to you because that's the only person there, right? So you would need that social connection to work in order to fulfill that need for socializing, if that makes sense. Those are just
So,
my, yeah,
so
that's my
we are
thoughts.
adding another element, then, which is the need of having a connection with certain people. So that means that maybe you are more open also to see the opposite views if you need that person. Like for instance, like maybe a relationship with your boss. Maybe you don't
Yeah,
like
yeah,
your boss at
true.
all, but if it is a
You
very
need
good
them.
job and it's your only mean to subside, like you will tolerate those opposite views because you need it. So we have a different element there. Interesting, good stuff.
But everybody
Uh,
has a social need. Everybody, it's built into us.
yes, yes. But okay, we have somebody who has been waiting for a long time to speak. So it's let's go ahead, Chao. Take it over.
All right. Um, yeah. Thank you for like all the inputs like so far. It's been like really thought provoking. And there's a thing that I noticed everybody said about differences in opinions of the way we in our interactions with others. But how about like differing opposite opinions existing within ourselves? Like for example, in a figuring state where we like trying to um, test the water, seeing like our positions and everything in the world. We kind of like our ideas and opinions about certain things are not fixed, and we kind of like open to possibilities, open to change. Like for example, it's just very hard in this stage to tell if things are black or white. The gray areas is like take the most room in here. So there's a lot of like room for improvement, for changes, and taking up like new ideas that will be like crucial in the forming of like characteristic and like identity in the future. And like at this time we're still not aware, like fully aware of ourselves and our positions in the world, in our community, and in defining ourselves in regard to interactions with others. So like how can that like coexist? Something can still it can be right in this certain situation, but it could be wrong the next one. And this is very hard to like just maintain a fixed idea, even when this is within a given individual. That's what I say. Like, can differing opinions coexist within an individual, and how will that affect their interactions with their community? I've been pondering
Okay. And there is something here that actually mentioned by Marcus, who I think kind of like also relates to what you're saying. He said, just because you have different values does not mean you cannot respect a person, but circles are formed because of the common values. Without that emotional connection, are you really friends?
Yeah, that one is true, but like I'm not talking about like respect or like the fact that you're being open-minded or not. It's just like differing values and like how that person like define their positions with regard to like their community and everything. Because like they have this changing notions of like themselves. Like for example, like I could be like I could agree to like some policy, like just for example, and like the next I think that oh this is good, but it doesn't make sense as much sense as like Biden's, for example. I'm still me, right? But like my thoughts regarding a certain matter can change. It's like open to changes and growth, and this is not fixed. And like is it but in a sense it still like coexists, right? But like I cannot like define myself well enough to like be articulate about my ideas to other people because I'm not fully aware which perspective I'm holding. Does that make sense? But just for example.
Yeah, I'll just say this quickly. I mean, I think what you're getting at is integrity. Uh, and again, when you hear the word integrity, think of the verb, to integrate, put it in the infinitive. To integrate is to take all the different parts of yourself and put them together in a way that's cohesive. So if you saw the email today, that was the question. Is like, can a relationship remain cohesive, remain whole, remain integrated if there are opposing moral viewpoints? And I think that does spread even more individually to oneself specifically. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we didn't really talk about that. But yeah, I mean, if you're struggling with yourself to determine, where you stand morally on any of these issues, typically one looks to those around them and, tries to gauge it from there. So yeah, no, good point.
Okay, so we have like the preliminary thing, but now we go to the main dish between like advisors. So go ahead, Luca, just kind of like teach him.
I think
So
that everybody's going to agree that you need basic levels of trust, but the trust isn't even, it's like, don't kill me. So we need a basic level of trust just for societal cohesion. And so everybody hit on this idea of we need that for just basic utility to be able to get along with people. But then we also have acquaintances. So there's another level of relationships where we need a little bit more trust. Now we need a little bit more psychological trust. Tiffany brought up, you need probably some shared experiences. And I agree, we can have acquaintances that we can get along with as long as we have a little bit more in common. I would like to focus in on these deep, meaningful, fully connected relationships of people that we would consider in our own community, and either marriages or best friends, or with those, can we have diametrically opposed point of view? Because with the other, it seems clear and easy that we can. With the ones that are the deepest relationship, though, I think that's where the problem comes in, and how long those can be sustained at that depth of level when you don't have anything in common.
Yeah. I know that the next in the queue is Mansi, so that's why I'm doing like a interlude. But yeah, like I do like some of the. I think it started with Shao, and Mansi was kind of like expanding. Like what happened when someone is really not sure where he or she stands morally. Like what if that person has not like do the proper introspection and doesn't know exactly what it believes, because sometimes we have those people that they go through life and they just go yes to everything. So they say, do this, yes, do this, yes. And they kind of just let the masses kind of like dictate what they're thinking. So what happens then? Like, I mean, we can assume that maybe that person just by inners will just follow. But then when you have maybe we add somebody else and those two people are like very opposite views, and you have this person who doesn't really believe in anything, what could happen then? Like, I mean, that's just a curiosity that I have in my mind
Well,
because, yes, go ahead.
Who said well?
um, I was just thinking, um, if like the person is not like sure of like where they're like morally standing, they can like easily be affected by their circles. So like whichever ideas, it's like they are a sponge, okay? So like whichever ideas is like surrounding them, it's very easy for them to like absorb it. And like if they don't have a really cohesive idea of like who like who they are, what are their morality like that, it's very easy for them to like get that idea from like other from their environment. But what I'm more interested in here is that like what if they are not having a fixed idea for like a certain for like everything. It's just like different opinions in certain situations. It's not like fixed. There's a room for growth there, and like, that could be changing. They are not like, oh, okay, like for to solve this problem, I have this solution. But I'm aware that there could be a better solution. So like I'm not gonna settle for this only. Does that make sense?
Um, I mean, I'm having a struggle
So
here
it's
in a
just like the
couple of
same
parts.
with like the moral standing. I don't know if like if you get my idea.
I think I
Yeah,
understand what
well,
you're saying. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was actually going to say this reminds me of something you were saying earlier, Tiffany, with the idea of again growing. Just because one holds a moral position or has moral values doesn't mean those will remain the same as you move forward. I mean, the reason why we link relationships to this whole moral question is because it's through relationships and human interaction that one comes to take hold of one's own moral positions, moral philosophies. And so the relationships that we engage in tend to change to some extent, perhaps, depending on how much weight you give experience, will change how you think about certain things based upon the very people that you're around. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what I heard you getting at there, Sha, was this idea of, change. Like there's dynamics to moral aptitude, to moral, again, we'll just say holding positions, holding opinions. And just to respond quickly to Luke, I mean, I don't know nowadays if you can really say it's clear with acquaintances and employees that you can coexist knowing that you don't hold similar moral points of view. I mean, I think cancel culture has proven that otherwise. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to respond quickly.
I know. I think that you're right, but it even
Luke,
gets
you respect the judge.
it even gets to what everybody's talking about right now, where Chow is saying, well, what about if there's development and you change? Well, as long as you're not in a pretty stringent conservative society where they don't allow that type of change. So you see something like Mormons are a very tight knit group. I know we've talked about the Amish before in here, where they send people away, and you get to decide if you want to come back in the group or not. So that's what I was trying to get at of what it matters, the community. So if you can change your mind, you can be in the middle, but you kind of swim in the sea of what everybody believes until you choose, and then you either put yourself in or you take yourself out at that point. But okay, go ahead. But your point about cancel culture, well taken. I agree.
Okay. Um. Okay. So I'm not sure if
Can I
that
just
was.
chime for a little?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, like addressing like your point. I was just like thinking about mm, something I forget. There's some like about relationship and everything. I think this is like a good point to kind of like scale ourselves, but with regard to the other people, like where you're standing, where you're at, like morally and things like that. But like relationships are like not fixed. This is like I think because there's some people we like get along very well in certain periods of our life, and they kind of assist our growth in certain areas. And when that relationship like doesn't work, doesn't serve its purpose anymore, it's time like to let it go. And like it's the same with the changing moralities and changing perspectives on things. You could be like holding this point at this time, and then the next moment you're like the next one. It's the same with like it's just like a mirror, like the way we hold our values, our beliefs, and like everything is translated into our social interactions. Like there's a relationship that like still matters to us because there's a like common grounds that we share, and that is like the sustaining force of the relationship. I mean, like we can be like open to others' perspective, but like to a certain degree as well. And um, all I think is we still like have to maintain the growth mindset to much of it can be a problem. Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know if that like yeah, that's just some of my thoughts on it.
right. Um, okay. I know, Mansi, that you have some things to do, so I'm not quite sure if you still want your floor. Otherwise, I move it to Isra.
Oh yeah, I think I already spoke. Yeah, move on to Israel. That's a good idea.
Okay.
I think these are really valuable and good points that everybody has posed in terms of the necessity of the relationship itself and how crucial is it to you and you feeling okay or just you feeling stable enough or emotionally secure or whatever else term you want to use. But essentially, it comes down to human nature in terms of at the end of the day, we at least need one other person to be able to connect with, who we can share things unfiltered, who we can share things without the fear of judgment or without the fear of, oh, that's what they're going to think of me. Because at that point, I guess people have known each other enough to understand that, okay, my opinion of them is not going to change based off of their behavior or whatever, because I know who they are on the inside. So I think morals help us define or help us kind of set up that framework for a person where we can initially decide or make that judgment in the first place that, okay, is this somebody I can feel secure with? Is this somebody that I can feel like I can share stuff with, and so on and so forth, in the sense that am I going to be safe with them? So I think morals kind of help us decide that, okay, if somebody does this or somebody does that, that's how I'm going to make my perception of them in terms of, are they okay to be around, or are they okay to talk about certain things, and so on. So something that was brought up earlier as well was that what would you do with relationships that you can't break, like mother and child relation or siblings relation, or those blood relations that you're just born with. So I think as we grow up, those relationships, like as we all kind of mature, we kind of start seeing that, okay, it's instead of getting into arguments and fights, it might be just better to just let that person be and kind of maintain our distance from them slowly and just move away from them. So in that case, you would kind of cut them off on talking about certain things, or for example, you might not discuss politics, or you might not discuss moral values in terms of how somebody might be making their income or how somebody treats other people and so on. If those are like hardcore relationships that you can't really get rid of, but they're still just there. So you just kind of learn to coexist with it without kind of letting it get to you that, oh, it makes me so angry they do this, it makes me so angry they do that, and so on. You kind of just let it go. But if you can't let it go, I think that's when issues start coming up in terms of relationships.
Okay. But there is this thing though. And I think I have discussed this with Mansi. Because I do believe that something that I hear periodically is that family bonds are like unbreakable and also. But some people don't see it that way. Some people don't even have it that way, and other people actually believe that all bonds should be unbreakable to some degree. They choose to like the same level of tolerance that you have for family should be applicable to other people who are not family, because sometimes those who are not family actually work harder for them to get in their bond. So like I don't know if that makes sense. Like sometimes you have parents who don't, they just teach you, and then you have friends who are actually the one who support you, are like out there for you and everything. So sometimes family is not the one who supports you the most. Um, so like can we say that there is such a thing as unbreakable bond or such thing? Because at
See,
some level, like mhm,
it comes back to what Ms. Tiffany said in terms of the level of importance of the relationship to you. It's not necessarily that
okay,
societally that's the relationship that's
it's not
important. It's
necessarily
just,
family. It's what I
yeah,
mean.
it's just you. How, like, how valuable do you think it is for some people? having a spouse or having a partner is more important than even tolerating their siblings or their mothers or anybody. So they would do everything they can to protect that one relationship. And for others, that relationship isn't that as valuable as maybe maintaining some relationship with your caregivers or somebody who might have inspired you or any other means, just in terms of how valuable or how close you think they are to you or how important they might be to you.
I see. Yeah, I understand the
I
point
want to
there.
add on to that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. You're next in line. I do have to read
Yay.
Marcus, but you're next in line. So go ahead.
I feel like Beetlejuice with the number. Um, I want to add on to it because I want to say that I think what Shao was saying about relationships and, you know, moral code. I'm getting lost here because I'm trying to go back further, but I think it matters more like how important you place relationships versus how important you place your moral code. If you place your moral code, if you know yourself very strongly and you spend a lot of time developing your own values, developing what you believe, and you have invested a lot into that, then I think you'll place more importance on that than a relationship. Whereas if you haven't, which is what Lucas said, swimming in the sea of what everyone else believes, if you haven't done that work, then you're more likely to place the importance on a relationship than moral code. So you're more likely to be able to be influenced by those around you. But I also think that, I mean, I know what I said about the importance of relationships, but that lends itself to the argument of like, does unconditional love exist? Because really what this all comes down to for me is hate versus love. And hate will drive people apart and love will bring people together. And does unconditional love exist? And I've done a lot of thinking around that. And I think no, because it can turn into something toxic. Does that make sense? If you allow someone in your life enough to influence you, to change who you are, to change what you believe, that can turn toxic. And so I don't think I have a conclusion for that, but I just wanted to bring up that idea of, I think this all boils down to hate versus love, and does unconditional love exist? And I think no, it does not, because people can abuse other people. I mean, and anybody feel free to jump in here, but that's kind of what this boils down to for me.
I'll respond quickly to that. Yeah, I think, well, especially to the earlier points you were making there, it sounds like, and again, I'm hearing this from a number of the students today, the focus maybe is less on what your values are and more on your relationship to your value, your relationship to value itself. So in other words, perhaps it's more about cultivating certain attributes or qualities of character, such as a willingness to forgive, or an open-mindedness, or a generous, I guess you could just say a generosity of thoughts, a tolerance for other perspectives. If you can cultivate that, then yeah, perhaps your values specifically may change, and perhaps, your positions, your moral positions might change. Maybe they go back and forth, whatever the case may be. But if you have certain, again, qualities of character, then you're less devoted, or you're less wedded to these specific moral claims or moral opinions on whatever given issue is at hand. And it's more about being the kind of person who is able to entertain multiple moral positions simultaneously and then decide for oneself. And then just quickly to your last point there about unconditional love, well, more specifically, to your point about the toxicity of possibly, being sort of drowned in a relationship that you didn't choose to be in, or something along these lines, your family, whatever the case may be. I do think there is something to the idea of when you become your own person, when you grow up, so to speak, is precisely when you begin to not challenge, but at least question the moral presuppositions that you inherited from the people that you hold in esteem, or you hold in authority. I believe that is where you can begin to maintain a relationship with somebody who maybe holds different positions, but you still, I guess, respect the value of your history together, or the impact or influence they had on you. I do think that's possible. but again, those come with conditions. So it's not a condition.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, tolerance is great. Tolerance is taught to us as a society, but up to a point. Like where is the point where you let go of your foundational beliefs in order to uphold tolerance? You have to have, you just, what the great, one of the most common quotes ever is, you have to stand for something or you'll fall for everything, right? So, but I still believe that you can uphold your beliefs and allow somebody else to uphold theirs without allowing them to breach, you know, who you are as a person. You can have an idea of love for them without allowing them to change who you are or manipulate you or abuse you. But you have to understand that, you know, those things can happen, and you have to see where the line is in order to preserve the relationship, in order to, you know, go back to the opening argument of, can this relationship survive? You have to know where that line is and be able to say, okay, I respect you and I love you enough to say, I'm drawing a line here. You know, I mean.
Okay, good
I
stuff.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm gonna read a couple of the comments that has been here, or at least a couple, no, more specifically, Marcus 2.0. He said, I think the need for connection has changed as technology has progressed. I think technology is a big problem with people working out their differences because they're more able to connect with people of similar values. And after that, you say next in the queue, and then I read a couple more. Oh, then it becomes an audiobook, but it's fine. Okay, you say, so take it on. Yeehaw. There you go.
Yeah, hard numbers. Anyways, see, in my opinion, the ideologies, especially in terms of a relationship, to kind of focus more on today's topic, um, they do coexist, right? And we've established that, whether it's through a common understanding or just identifying the differences that the two people have. Like, I heard someone discuss. I do apologize for who it was, but I discussed that, oh, since we have differences and we don't have any commonalities, we cannot be in this relationship, whether it's acquaintance, friendship, any other form of relationship. So I would like to offer a rebuttal to that, because no matter what, we always have something in common, right? Whether it's a physical feature, whether it's an ideology, whether it's a mental feature, your ethics, morals, characters, your surroundings, your history, your future plans, education, etc. You can go on the list. So in my opinion, at least, you can always find something in common should you put in the effort for it. So again, being or having a successful relationship even after the differences matters on how much you invest in it as a person, right? Now, what if the other person doesn't invest as much? Then you should know your self-worth, and you should know where your own boundaries and limits lie, and when enough is enough. You should be strong enough to be able to step out of that relationship in order for it to not turn into something abusive or anything like that, because I heard those comments as well, um, prior to my intervening. So the last part that I'll touch up on is the unconditional love, and I believe, Tiffany, you were talking about it, and Professor Ulrich, you also kind of brushed up on it, if I remember correctly. So, with that being said, um, the first thing, I don't know how you guys' relationship is with your parents, but the first and foremost thing I can think of is a parent's love to its child, right? Now, when we think of a relationship, we say that, okay, it's mutually beneficial, right? My time for your time, I get you dinner, you get me lunch. Basically, it's tit for tat, it's vice versa. You invest something and you get something back out of it. But what about a parent's love for its child, right? The child can't give them anything. The child is too young to work. The child is too young to speak. The child is too young to create anything. It can't do anything. It's just laying there like a sack of potatoes. All it does is cry and poop. That's it. So with that, the parent still loves the child wholeheartedly, whether the parent is sick, hungry, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're physically hurt, they're mentally not in the space, work pressure, and you can go on and on about the things that the parents overcome just to be able to raise their child to the best of their abilities. Now, Marcus and I, the other Marcus, Marcus Russell, him and I and Orlando had a discussion like a week ago where we talked about how to bring up a human being properly. And that was the advanced level of the discussion. If you guys want to be part of that, feel free to stay behind. We usually open up another chat room and we go over the advanced stuff. So we came to a common conclusion that we raise a child in our parents' shadow. Like we say that, okay, I remember my parents, didn't let me stay out late. So, and I turned out to be great in my opinion. So I'm going to do that with my child. I'm not going to let them out late. My parents didn't get me a cell phone until like I was 16, 17, 18, whatever. I'm not going to get my child. But at that moment, we forget that the times have changed, right? You need to have a cell phone. Like you can live without a car, you cannot live without a cell phone or at least some form of communication device. Now, I'm not saying for kids. Tiffany, I see you making faces there. I'm not saying like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year old kids. I'm talking about high school and upwards, right? So in
Uh,
case, forbid, any emergency happens, they need to be able to communicate. So
what if
that's
they're poor and they cannot have phone?
Well, see, we for us in this society, we have this ideology that okay, a phone has to be a smartphone, right? It has to be a touch screen. It has to be blah 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 blah. It has to have a camera. You could give them a simple flip phone. That's what I grew up with. All it could do was text and call. One of those old Nokias with the green screen that if you drop it, you break the floor. Those are the ones that I grew up with. Yes, Nokia. Thank you. Uh, so it's a matter of our perception. And I'll just wrap it up by saying that, in my opinion, unconditional love does exist. Now, my sister's here, and everyone has a different way of showing their love towards the other person, right? Without having to say it. With my brother, it's more aggressive, more violent, to the point where my dad thinks we're actually having a fight. Just the other day in the backyard, we had an entire wrestling match, just because that's our way of showing affection to one another. I didn't gain anything from it. He didn't gain anything from it. So unconditional love, it does exist. It just is very situational. It's very specific. It's very peculiar.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna move the queue very quickly. There are some points that I can even see Tiffany's kind of like bursting out. It's very representative of the topic. Very opposite team. Like, can they get together? I don't know. We will see. Stay tuned. So, but for the moment, so the water can cool down. I'm gonna read. So I'm gonna read first. The first comment is from Shouts. He said, "Sometimes the relationship itself doesn't hold up anymore without the trust, not because of the difference in opinions." Then Isra says, "So can we agree that trusting someone may be more important than morals sometimes? Because I've seen movies where toxic behaviors are fetishized. Sorry, pardon my French, or made desirable by portraying that if someone loves you long enough, or vice versa, the behavior can go away." Then she responded, "I think the trust enables us to be open to welcome and accept others' opinions, so it could be a deal breaker in tolerating differences." Then Isra said, which I disagree with, since more people deserve better, and at some point you have to draw the line between your own mental health, sense of self, and upholding someone else's belief or values. This was a continuation of my comment, not what Shao said. Very specific. And she put like like an asterisk, just, because she's writing properly. Now we have with Lucas. Water. No, I don't have water with me today. Everyone should watch the movie The Painted Veil. connects to today's topic. Really enjoyed everyone today. It was an interesting topic and enjoyed everyone's discussion. Happy I was able to have another good discussion this week in Philosophy Club. If he left, week. If you're still there, hey, what's up? You still have the position open. But if you left, week. I guess we have to stay with Nancy. Okay, so then we have Tiffany. We are all humans, and that makes us all have something in common. Like you say, saying now, humanity unites us. And she continues, I would argue that the child gives the parents a purpose, a deeper life meaning, which is a lot. And yes, please add me to the chat based on Israel's facial expression alone. And then Israel was a little bit more specific. That is the Nokia, which is the Thanos of one word because it never breaks, but it destroys everything it touches. And then we have Tiffany again, which says we choose the dependency we have on technology, though. Okay. Wow. Whew. It was getting hot in here, like they have a fan. But well, yeah, I don't have anything else in the queue. But I mean, yes, I'm just gonna say that I do believe that people can live without phones because some of them still do. That's what I'm gonna say. And with that, we move on because we need to pick up a new topic for next week. Yeah, I know. It's sad. We have to. Hey, everything ends at some point, but
It's
hey, we
that
cannot.
time of the day again.
It's that time of the day when we have to decide. I mean, yeah, we can choose, and if by any chance Israel's topic wins, we can always just rebuttal the winning, and after all of you leave, we can pick a different topic as we were doing last week. Okay, so do any of you want to speak on something particular other than that? I just pick what we left last week, and we go from there.
What was the contender for this week's topic last week that Orlando wanted to talk about?
It was number one, which was what makes us more human, nature or technology?
I'm up for that.
Wow. Wow, she's up for that, so I guess that's gonna lose this week. Let's see. Da-da-da. So I'm gonna remove here number three. Oop, okay. And now I go back and see if there is new topic. I cannot hear anything, but I'm going down. Don't worry. I have Marcus here. He said we are arguing that we draw a line for a relationship to exist. Two people must exist, and for a person to continue to exist, you have to break it down to you being an individual. For you to survive, you have to take care of oneself first. If you're always giving the to others' needs before your own, how long will you last before you are not recognized as a person? Yeah, good comment.
Mic drop. He walks away.
Mic drop. He didn't want me to have the last word, so he just. I mean, it's still my voice, though. You could have just spoken, but hey, it's fine. It's all good. I guess it's a win-win scenario. All right, so I'm gonna just post the ones that is already left since I haven't heard anything new. Hook. Oh wait, it should be over here. Ciao. So we have four topics. Feel free to type the number of the one that you want to speak. The one with most votes is the one who's gonna be our next topic for next week. It's that easy. I try to abstain voting so I can have like you know the sing then the I mean technically that's how it should be. Presidents do not vote so they can unbreak the tie. Uh so one, we have then two, we have one again. Oh, one is winning. I don't see Isra's number, so her vote doesn't count. Three. Oh wow. You have okay. One is winning. One is winning. But I have four votes, and I'm missing at least other three people. We have two. Ooh, it's a tie so far. Okay, I'm missing Marcus, and I'm missing Areli. Areli, are you there? Areli, Areli. I think you speak Spanish, so I'm tempted. Ooh, she's here. You were about to be embarrassed, just a little bit, but you responded on time. So, but the only thing is like you just make us tie again. Why am in this position? Why I have to hold this position to be breaking ties? What if I just pick three and we don't have a topic for next week? What about that? Okay, so let's see. Okay. All right, I'm gonna pick number one. It's number one. It's number one. I'm so sorry. Uh, with that, maybe we're gonna have the return of the alien. So it isn't the best. I was a little bit biased. But I'm trying to see if Orlando comes back with this topic. All right. So next topic for next week is going to be my laptop is failing me right now. Is There you go. Wow. What makes us more human, nature or technology? Okay. Good stuff, everyone. It was a good one. Very moving.
That is what makes a stable democracy.
Yeah, that's exactly. Learn from this meeting. You think there is democracy? Not on my watch,
No,
no.
no, that's
Not
not
on
what
my
makes a
watch.
stable democracy. What makes a stable democracy is gerrymandering, is drawing
Yeah.
county lines how you want
Oh,
them to. It's just the whole thing.
Not
You
on
make
my
know,
sure that I
watch.
can have
stuff.
some conversations.
Yeah, you thought you had the power to pick the topic. No, it's
Oh,
all
no,
back
this is
to
an
me,
illusion.
like
No,
Thomas.
this is an illusion. I'm letting y'all have it, so it doesn't look like I'm dictating everybody. You know, that's how dictatorship works, quote unquote. You let somebody think they had the
Hey,
decision, and then boop, you take it back.
hey, this is the thing. You have the power. All of
That's
you
what
have
you
the
tell
power.
yourself in
Exactly.
the mirror. That's what you tell yourself in the mirror.
She knows me too well. She knows me too well. Yeah, I was actually just
Use a
talking
post-it
to
note.
myself. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that self-affirmation kind of
Wait,
thing.
wait,
That
wait, wait, wait. Let me do it this way.
Oh,
You have the
oh
power.
no.
You have the power.
boo, boo,
I could
boo,
just
boo.
close my
Boo.
laptop though. See, I
Boo.
could just close it.
Wait,
Bye-bye.
we're still recording. We're still recording.
Okay, so anyways, okay, that was it. Again, like every week, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're enjoying this summer so far. Check us again in social media, website, everything. We try to be active. Yeah, and if you want to be more involved with philosophy, just let us know, and we can have some interviews with you, so we can see what you can add for the philosophy club. Beside that, ignore Mansi a little bit. He likes it. He's a little bit raw, but he needs, to be a little bit more self-esteem.
Yeah.
And that's it. So think about it, and until next week. There you go.